Today's a pretty cool class. I actually really like this topic. Um, we're kind of winding down with our Ignite program for this quarter with make and receive offers. I think you guys kind of can detect the whole arc that we do with Ignite, sort of starting out, with lead generation and lead gen 101, moving into seller and buyer stuff, and then kind of really talking about what happens in the transaction once you've done the work, you've gotten the leads, you've brought them, to either pre-approved or you've gotten the listing, and then you've accepted an offer. And kind of what all that looks like. Today we have Linda Reed from our Eugene Springfield Market Center to take us through make and receive offers. Linda was licensed in the summer of 2017 as a solo agent. She's been in the top 20% of production in our Eugene office. She's big into our culture committee and has served on our culture committee in our office, and thinks that KW culture is one of our strongest assets. She's a huge proponent of lifelong learning, participated in Bold twice, and really never misses a chance to attend the trainings that we have around our network. So I will go ahead and hand things over to Linda for make and receive offers. Hey, Linda.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Now I'm going to do this share screen. So just make sure that I am up and running here before you abandon me, because I'm an idiot when it comes to this. Well, not a total idiot, but close. Okay, so control to select the windows. Why is it? There we go. Okay, let's see if we can make this bigger. Okay, I think I'm on track. Okay. So can everybody hear me? Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Aaron, for the handoff. And as always, it's my pleasure to be here and teach a class of Ignite. I love the aspect of these Ignite classes and what they bring to us as new agents and even as seasoned agents. And I heard you, many of you, talking about making and working on your CMAs. And I've been in the business since 2017, as Aaron mentioned, and I still struggle with CMAs. So there's oftentimes I go back and I just sit in on the classes for CMAs just because I just don't feel like that's my strong suit. And oddly enough, I do, like last year, I probably had 70% listings and only 30% buyers. And this year I'm about 50-50. So in any case, the CMA is pretty important in what we're doing and how we get our satisfy both our buyers and sellers to get us to the finish line, get a commission check for us, and get their properties sold in a short period of time and get us on down the road. So I'm open to questions. Don't hesitate as we go along through these slides. I have a tendency to use these slides as a guide only. I don't like to read each and every one of the little footnotes because you have your manual. I assume you can read. And so I would rather tell stories, answer questions, and kind of give you some of my experiences on the topic as we get to each one of these slides. So again, just interrupt me and we'll go ahead and take your questions and see if I can get rid of this thing. Although I love your pretty faces, I need to see my screen. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So, oh yeah, they're going to tell me how to prepare for this class and all this kind of good stuff and outline, disclaimers. Today's agenda, we're going to, oh, that's a really good agenda. Okay, so we're going to jump right to the course overview, and it doesn't actually tell me what page this is in your book. It shows page number 9 for me, but I don't know that that correlates to what you have. I'm just flipping through my pages here and see if it tells me anything. Okay, no. All right, so today we're at the make and receive offers, which our belief system. Now, we used to, at each one of our monthly all partners meetings, we used to stand up and recite each one of these that is in the Y. I never quite understand what the Y4C2TES, it's a lot of stuff. But to me, the interesting thing about this is I have found the more times that you hear something, you can pull it out of your memory And oftentimes just the phrases that come from this belief system, you can use when you're relating to either your buyers or your sellers. And when you're trying to sell yourself to get a listing, there is just the integrity portion about doing the right thing, and customers always come first. Those are things that you can repeat in your own presentation of yourself, and just to promote yourself and to solidify what your own belief system is. And if you want yours to be something that's different than this, I just say don't reinvent the wheel. This has worked for many, many, many thousands of agents throughout the Keller Williams system. And I think that it just shares little tidbits that is great information through, for example, the teamwork. Together, everyone achieves more. And that could not be more true than when you're talking about making and receiving offers. And Bo Bennett was, as an author, I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate a person or persons into a win-win situation. And I believe that people do better with information, and then they can make solid decisions. And so information is powerful. And you can also say that it's, and just as a background to my my history, before I became a real estate agent, I was a wholesale lumber broker for 30 years. I bought and sold lumber across the United States, and I was the only woman in our sales team. And there's probably only about 1% females that are in the sales end of wood products, mainly because it's just seen as a male industry. But I loved it. I had a great time doing it, and I had product knowledge. And what that set me apart from a lot of the other people who entered the business, because when I went into the wholesaling end of it, I'd already had experience at working at a sawmill, and I was the bookkeeper and I answered the phones and everything. It was kind of like a one person office. You did everything, include make the coffee every morning. But what happened is that I did not realize that I had learned and gained these really great negotiation skills that came into being one of the biggest assets that I have in terms of being a real estate agent. And so sometimes we look at ourselves and don't see the assets that we have that are right in front of us. So we'll just go ahead and proceed to the next slide. So this one is going to talk first about the offer process. So the buyer makes an offer to the listing agent. But I would say before you ever start this, that the first call that you should make, and I do this generally before I show the house. If it's a first day listing, I don't necessarily call the agent and ask them a bazillion questions, although you can. If you think it's going to be a really hot listing that's going to get multiple offers, then when I would call, and some of the people will have you book your sessions on showing time, I don't click that on my listings. I click or even put in the private notes for them not to use showing time, because as a listing agent, I want to talk to as many of those buyer's agents as I possibly can so that I can put my sales skills to work and sell my property to that agent first before they've even looked at it. So there is information that a buyer's agent can ask that listing agent that's going to make a difference on how you work with your client on that particular listing. The last 2 or 3 days, I've been doing showings for another KW agent that's been on vacation. And so I've been showing about 3 houses a day to their client. And I like to show for other agents. I like to also hold open houses for other agents. Both of those things lead you to more contacts. But one of the most important things about doing both of those is that if you don't have buyer clients up your sleeve and somebody needs a showing, you go and show this house, you get an opportunity to see what else is out there on the market. And you just can work on your skills about pointing out things that are of importance to those clients, even though they're not yours. I don't try to become their agent, because I'm not. And I always represent that if your agent, if the listing agent's name is Katrina, I'll say, or not listing agent, the buyer's agent, when I'm showing property for a buyer's agent, I'll say, Katrina, your agent can get you more of that information. I don't try to do all of the duties that you would do as a listing agent, but I love the opportunity to go out and look at properties purposefully. And that way it just keeps my thumb on the marketplace better. Now, some people may say, well, you should spend that time doing lead gen. Well, I hate doing lead gen. I'd rather go look at houses. So, we each have to run our business like we want to run it, but I don't pass up the opportunity to go and do those two things, open houses and show for other agents if I've got the time. If I don't have the time, then I don't try to crowd it into my already busy schedule. So when I have this client that's interested in the house, the first thing that I do, if it's like day one of the listing, I will call that listing agent and I will say, do you have any other offers on the table? And if they say no, you can just say, is this property getting a lot of showings? And that way, if it's creating a lot of interest. And these are just important things to keep your finger on the pulse of this listing. If you go and show the listing, your buyer likes it, then I call back that agent. Now, I cannot tell you how many times that I have had agents that never make any contact with me whatsoever. They'll prepare an offer, they will email it to me, and they don't even bother to text me to tell me that I have an email. And lots of times when a property goes on the market, I had one that was in March on a little street called Oakdale here in Eugene, and it was right next to Riverbend Hospital. And it was on fire from the get-go. I did not schedule a thing for that day, and I sat in front of my laptop and with my phone at hand because I was getting texts right and left. Has this so the I lost a stupid text came in and I looked. Don't do that. Anyway, but agents will go through this whole process and they will not call me or have any contact with me. I may have 3 offers by the time that they get around to having submitted the offer. If you don't mind, I'm going to just answer this text so they keep sending me a second one. Okay, so anyway, communication and building rapport with that listing agent is highly recommended to make you to be in the front part of that agent's brain, because I cannot tell you how many times that agents, you just start to build this nice rapport when they ask good questions or they tell you a little bit about the seller, and they just, that this person has their stuff together and that you would like to work with this person or whatever. But it's just super important to start building rapport with that agent. So then the seller is going to respond in one of 3 ways. They will counter the offer, accept the offer, or reject the offer. Let me go back and say that when you do send this offer, as someone who does a lot of listings, I like to have a buyer agent who sends me a recap of their offer in the email that they send to me. So they tell me what their purchase price is. And if they've written an escalation clause, and I like to know that, and I like them to spell it out that they've written an escalation clause up to, $10,000 over, and that they'll pay $2,000 over the next best price, when they would close, if it's a conventional loan, and the time frame, like if they're closing in 30 days or if they're closing in 45 days. I just like all of that just blurted right out there, because if I'm getting multiple offers on a property, I print off all of those offers. I print off the emails. I have them all together. Then I lay them out, and I put them on an Excel spreadsheet if I have multiple offers, so that I can fill in these columns on the spreadsheet that I have, so that it's easy for me to relate that information to a seller. Because if you just verbally give them that information, it's very difficult for them to track with you when you have multiple offers. Does anybody have any questions about that part? Okay, so once you've given the submitted your offer, and then the seller is and the seller, one of the questions that you would ask as a buyer's agent when you made your initial contact with the listing agent, if they didn't put in the MLS when they were reviewing offers, then ask them how much time they need to respond. This property that I was telling you about that I had in March, a little street called Oakdale, that property, we pulled it off the market, I believe, in 36 hours. I would have pulled it off probably in 24 hours, because at 24 hours I already had 8 offers. And but I had booked some showings for the next day, and I just did not feel right in going back on my word and telling those agents that we'd already accepted an offer. Having been on both ends of the spectrum of being both a buyer's agent and a seller's agent, I have a great deal of sympathy or empathy for the buyer's agent trying just to get in to show a property and have a chance at making an offer. So, but at that point, I will tell clients when they call in, I have 8 offers, I have 9 offers, or whatever. And sometimes they'll say, when they know that there's that many, then they will just decline to show it. And that's okay. When you have 8 offers, you don't need the 9th one to show it, unless they're all crappy offers, and that's probably not going to happen. So if they accept the offer, that's all well and fine, and then you celebrate. But if they reject the offer, then when they reject the offer, you're not in the game anymore. But if they counter the offer, you're still in the game. So let's say that you $10,000 less than what they were listed, and they come back and they want that they'll meet you halfway at 5,000. So then once you're still in that process of, and then there's a time frame for when they you have to accept that offer, counter offer. But anyway, that helps keep you in the process of being able to buy that house if they counter it. But if they flat out reject it, then you're starting over. So sometimes when it's the counter offer, as this graph shows, then you go into negotiation. And lots of times, for example, a house that I just closed on here this week, they had just one other offer. But when I first called the agent, I had had a couple of conversations with her. Once we showed the property, I called her immediately, and I said, my clients are interested in this property. And at that point, I just talked to her like an hour or so earlier, so I knew that she didn't have any other offers, or didn't assume that she did not. And so I said to her, are we good at your purchase price? And so she said yes. But in the meantime, before I got my submitted, there was an offer that came in. So wrote an escalation clause. And in doing so, the house was listed at 349. And typically agents will write it in that price point, they'll write, I will pay over $1,000 over your best offer. And then they set a top limit of how much they'll pay. So in this case, I said to my buyers, I said, we need to write for 2,000 over. And so I have made it a policy that I either write it at 2,000 over or $2,500 over the asking price, because so many times people write it, they may write it for 500 over, they may write it for just 1,000. And if the other terms aren't as good, 500 over, you know, an agent will hardly even look at it for 500. So, I mean, as far as picking yours over another offer, if all of the other, everything being equal, they may, but they may not. They may take that very first offer that came through, and it may be that they like it better because it was a quicker close. Maybe they could close in 30 days and you wanted 45. Those are all kinds of points that if you get the information from the listing agent about what that seller wants to make your offer a good offer, then you can avoid some of those pitfalls. So accepting the offer, then it's, as the chart indicates, it begins the contract to close process. But in the reject offer, then the buyer's agent has to contact the listing agent to learn what this buyer wants that you could offer to get it. Sometimes it's not just the price. Many times it will be just the price, but it isn't always. So you do have to ask questions. Okay. So any ahas from that little session? Is someone trying to speak and you're not coming through, or? Okay, we'll just move on then to the next. So this is preparing to write the offer. So ensure that the property is still available. It's interesting how you never know where that listing agent is. For example, I had one that was on vacation, and when I had written the offer, when I was preparing to write the offer, and the property wasn't available, they had accepted another offer, but that agent did not have time or had not taken the time to go into the MLS and to mark it as pending. So before you waste your time showing the property and all of that, unless it's like the first day, that is one of the questions that you want to ask, is just ask that listing agent, is the property still available? I talked a little bit before about building rapport with that listing agent, asking good questions, inquiring about the activity, which I mentioned. If there are other offers on the property, and if some of them fell through. For example, I have a country property that I've had on the market for about 4.5 months, and country property, you know, there's a much smaller percentage of people that want to live in the country, and there's an even smaller percentage that want to have 10 acres because you've got to maintain that 10 acres. And so it's just not a property for everybody. But the house was completely updated, nice little property, all one level house. And we had multiple offers over time. But it started out, we listed at $750, and there were 2 other houses that were within a 5-mile radius of where this listing was, and another one that was still considered Junction City, but it was probably about 10, maybe 7 miles away. All of those were listed in either 8.25 or $850. So I felt that we were very competitively priced at $750. But it sat there, and we got showings, but we didn't get any offers at $750. So I reduced it to $699, which was a pretty hefty reduction. But because the showings had just fallen off the map, I needed to get some activity going. So at that point, I got an offer from someone who they offered 610. So that's basically $89,000 difference. And it was subject to them selling another piece of property, but it happened to be a property down near Chiloquin. And 50-acre properties are hard enough to sell in some of these more metro areas than in Chiloquin. So they put it out for 4 months to close, and I didn't feel like it was fair to my sellers to accept an offer like that. Number one, because if we had it off the market for those 4 months, then we would have lost a lot of traction. And then our days on market would just have gone up because we would have to come back on. So we passed on that one. Plus it was too cheap. And so time went by and we got a second offer, and that one was at $650. So that was still $689 versus $650, $39,000 difference. It was in a trust and the trustees didn't want to accept it. So we passed on that one. And all of these offers fell through because of the price of what they were offering. And it wasn't that we wouldn't take a counter, but it was that they had gone too deep in their offer, in their price. And so as time went on, when I started getting showings, I would say to these other agents, I would tell them what offers we had and what the amounts were and why we didn't accept them. Because when you're on the market that long, you need as much going in your favor as you can get, and you want a good solid offer. And so I did have to reduce it one more time, and we finally are in contract. So, but people really want to know why it falls through. They think it falls through because of condition, because of like an inspection report. That's their first thought. So it was really important for me to be able to pass that information on, that it was all about price, not about condition. And in some cases, seller motivations and their needs, most of the time for me, it's been that the sellers are moving on to other property, or they're moving into assisted living as they're aging. So those are kind of a couple of the main things. Not too often do I have that they're leaving town or moving to another town, or wanting to. I don't have too many that are wanting to upsize, but I have more of them that are wanting to downsize. And ask the listing agent how they want to receive the offer. And so, and honestly, I'm not even sure what they mean about that. Whether they want you to hand deliver it, I can't even imagine, because everybody sends it by email. So I'm not sure what they're really, what they're expecting. There are sometimes I've actually presented offers in person, which is kind of fun.
Could it be the form?
Pardon me?
Could it be the form that they wanted to use, like OREC forms or Oregon Review?
Yeah, that would be, I would think that would be true, except for this particular Ignite thing, having taught it several times, it was before we had the OAR forms. So in this case, I don't think so. But it is good to ask those agents if they want the OREF or the OAR forms. And I have gone through my first transaction with an agent that wanted the OAR forms. And I don't do my own transactions, so we did have a hiccup or two with it. So it is kind of interesting working with those two forms. And of course, learning something new is never all that much fun. But in looking, I sat through the classes that Tom Dye did on those OAR forms, and they're very well thought out. I like them, but I don't really want to use them, because if it left to my own devices, I've only worked with the OREF for me to fill them out. So if I had to do it myself, I would prefer the OREF. So just make sure that you read in the private notes to the agents if they're requesting OREF forms. and you want to do what it makes those listing agents happy. So, obtain the buyer's approval, pre-approval from the lender. Okay, so here's something that, boy, I'll tell you, the longer that you're in the business, you'll realize that there becomes certain things that your little radar goes up on. And I'm getting to the point now where I won't show a property period to anybody without a pre-approval form. And I've just been burned by them. And I want to know, and a pre-approval is not the same as a pre-qualifying. Pre-qualifying means that they've gone through underwriting to some degree. It's a deeper dive into their credit and everything. But for the most part, and especially if it's a local lender, you can call up that lender and chat with them about this buyer's pre-approval. And that lender will say, oh yeah, this is a really solid buyer. They're good. So don't hesitate to do that either. But for you in showing houses, that pre-approval form, that's just something that you want to get right up front. And don't be lax about it, and don't feel like that you're asking too much of them, because if you get into a competition with other buyers, you are not going to get your offer accepted if you don't come with showing that you have a qualified buyer. It just won't happen. So you're just doing yourself a disfavor by not getting that up front. The other thing is, and I've been about 50-50 on it, but I don't always get the buyer's agreement form filled out. It's one of those that it's not as binding as a regular contract. They're really easy to get out of, and they probably don't hold up, but they do protect you and your buyer when like your buyer may go out, and buyers always do this. They go out and look at open houses without you. And if I know that they're going to be doing that, I tell them I want to go with them. But I know I've had personal experience with agents who have had a buyer go through their open house when that buyer had been shown property by someone else, but they didn't have a buyer's agreement signed between that buyer and their other agent. And so then if the agent didn't respond, then I've seen where the listing agent has said, well, I can write it for you. And then your commission, any work that you did on that is gone. So, you know, it's one of those things that can be uncomfortable to ask for. And I have a particular buyer right now that he did the thing with me where he said, oh, well, I'm not going to sign one of those because I don't know if I want to work with you yet. And I wish that at that very moment that I would have said, fine, once you decide if you do want to sign that form, then I'm willing to show you houses. I have driven that guy to Myrtle Creek, which is an hour and a half each way. I've driven up to Lebanon to show this guy property. And I just found out today that he's probably going to buy a house from somebody that he knows. It's an unlisted property. And so I'm going to get 0 out of that. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't have done that if I had that agreement signed. But, you know, it's one of those live and learn things. And I just wish that I had done it. I wish that I had just trusted my gut instinct and just went ahead and said, you know, been bold enough to say, if you don't sign it, I just can't show you property. It's my commitment to you and your commitment to me. And from this time going forward, I won't do it anymore. He's not the first one I've been burned by, but at this point I'm getting tired of it. So when I reach that limit, then I can become really bold about saying no. So just know your value, and if they aren't committed to you, then you probably don't have much of a rapport with them yet anyway. Review the MLS and tax records. The tax records, you know, I don't know that I pay that much attention to them, but there are some minor things that can come up. And if you have a subscription, look, for those of you who are here in Lane County, we have RLID, and that's the Regional Land Information Directory. And it will tell you if they're behind in their taxes and that sort of thing. And this country property that I have, there's some sort of $5,500 past tax, and it must be like sort of like a farm deferral tax or something that the seller is going to have to pay, or the trust is going to have to pay at closing. So, you know, it's kind of good to just take a look at those tax records. And it's really important for your buyers to know how much property tax that they're going to pay on a property, because property taxes by law in the state of Oregon go up 3% every year. They can't go up 4 or 5%, but 3% every year that it goes up, it eventually you're talking some serious money that it's increased. And unlike your interest rate, those property taxes don't remain static. So not only does that 3% go up, but the value of the property, I mean, the 3% there's going up, but then it's compounded each year. So that the amount of property taxes, just do the math for your buyers so that they know that they're paying $200 a month versus $400 a month in property taxes. Review the MLS. And I like to go back on properties. If I have someone that's getting pretty interested in buying one, I'll go back and check out the history of the property, just look and see. I had a property that I sold in Portland. It sold for like $1.3 million. And I was halfway through the process of the sale when I decided to go back and look up the history. And it turned out that it was a house built in 1928. And when the seller had bought that,
Hey, just I can't see the moderator anymore. Is anybody else getting that?
Yeah, I can't see her either.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
she froze.
Um, but like the screen name is still there. Oh, new host. Well, you're the host.
Aha, we're back. I'm not sure what happened. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this screen here, and then, so can you all still see the screen? No.
No?
Okay, so, all right, well, let me see how we get this back then. I have no clue. Huh. Huh. Okay, so you're seeing anything there?
No.
Oh, Lordy. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to do something dangerous, and I'm going to go ahead and completely go out of this and try to come back in and see if it will allow me to I hate doing this because I'm afraid I'm going to lose you all. Okay, so everyone's still there?
Yes.
Okay, all right, well. Okay, did that work?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm not sure where I left off or where it disconnected me, but let's go on to item number 9 on here. Produce a CMA, comparative market analysis.
Linda.
Go,
Linda.
yes.
Yeah, you were actually talking about MLS on the
Okay.
property you sold for 1,300,000 in
Oh,
Portland.
okay. Oh, okay. So what happened was when I was partway through the process of this sale, and I decided to look up and see if I could find any photos for her. She wanted to look and see what the house used to look like. We knew it had been remodeled. We just didn't know what it looked like. So I went in the history, and it turns out that it was a doctor who had owned the property. He had it was a 1928 bungalow with a thatched roof, and he had built the entire second story and turned it into a Dutch colonial, and it looked on the exterior nothing like what it looked like when it was sold the previous time. And the other interesting thing is that the property had been on the market for about 90 days. And if they had just marketed that half of that house was brand new, including that the ceilings were 10 feet tall on the upper level, they were taller upstairs than they were on the main floor. So, anyway, it was just really fascinating. And so we just learned more about the property and all of that. So it was just interesting and more valuable as we went along. And she really, as a buyer, she was fascinated by it and really appreciated the information. It's something I should have done in the beginning, but I just didn't do it. Somehow I missed it.
Linda, I got a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you're talking about property taxes. The property you were talking about built in 1920s, and then they kind of like renovated the house. I've seen houses that they're like again also built in like 1920s, and they would retain like a wall, and they would say that it's for property. I mean, yeah, property tax purposes, that they would be paying less tax because they retained an old wall. So they tore down everything except for a piece of wall. Is that how does that work?
Now, I'm certainly not a tax expert, but I don't think that in the state of Oregon that it would affect your property taxes. I don't think that would work, because
Mhm.
what happen is that when you apply for a building permit, then you have a new assessment of, once you've completed the restoration, then you have a new
Mhm.
assessment, and then your property taxes go up.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I've heard that, like, particularly in California, they used to do that, but I don't know that is, could be, but I've not heard of it being the case here in Eugene.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, they get you when they do the permits, and so they know exactly what you're doing. For example, I added a third bathroom to my house last year. And so the county knows all about that third bathroom now, because you had to get electrical permits and had to submit a drawing and everything. It did not increase the square footage of the house. I just enlarged the room. It was a bedroom, and didn't have an actual closet, so it wasn't necessarily a legit bedroom. And so I turned it into a dressing room and a full bathroom. So it didn't increase my square footage, but it did increase the value by adding a third bathroom. So to produce a comparative market analysis, I do not always do that. If I've been showing property to a buyer, and I might do it if I was.
I'm still not sure about that.
my stupid iWatch talking to me, Apple Watch. If I've already shown this buyer, let's just say that I've shown them 10 or 15 houses. They know where that market is on a particular house. They know for sure. And like this house that I just closed on this past week, I only showed those buyers like 6 or 7 houses. And they knew this little house, even though we wrote an escalation clause, was under market value for the rest of the houses that we looked at. So I, unless you're doing something with a marketed, a really inflated escalation clause, lots of times people will pay more than what the market might bear for the actual appraised value of the house. But if they're putting down 50% or more, a lot of times the lender will waive the appraisal. So it doesn't really matter. It only matters to them if they were going to turn around and sell it right away. So that's just something that I don't always do. Now, and then once you're in the process, here it says obtain a seller's disclosure and other needed documents. I think that because these Ignite forms are go across the United States, in Oregon, we don't have to, a listing agent doesn't have to provide that seller disclosure until they're actually in contract. So, you may not have that information. On my country property, for example, I've loaded up things like the well flow test and the analytical test on the water. And we put a brand new septic system in. And so I put in a receipt for what the septic system and the drain field work was, so that they could just see that it was done. And that way you don't have to like pump out the septic because it's a brand new system, and it just saves some effort. And so we can, on the RMLS, we can upload a total of 5 documents. So those are easy things for those buyer's agents to be able to do their research before they even show the property. Okay, any ahas about the preparing the offer?
I got a question though, Linda.
Mhm.
Okay, so you talked about escalation clause earlier. If you're the listing agent and then there's a escalation clause that's presented to you, do you have to provide them with the highest bid already before you accept an offer that's escalated?
Not before you accept it, but when you accept it and you're going to tell that buyer what they're paying. Let's just say that you wrote that the listing price was $350 and you said pay $2,000 over your best offer up to $375. So if the best offer was $360, then your buyer's going to be paying $362. Not the full price that you escalated to.
Yeah, but do you have to show
Yes.
the one who's qualified how much
Yes.
the highest bid was? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is part of the escalation clause itself. Let me, I'll just quickly pull up my file here and I'll read you what, if I can find it real quick, I'll read you what my escalation clause says. I'm not seeing it right here, but see if I have it under forms, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, there is if just send me an email and I'll find it in my I'll find it in my I'll find it and email it to you, but uh,
Okay.
what it says is that the escalation clause itself will say, I will um I'll pay all of this, blah, blah, blah. But that the listing agent has to send me, and they block out like the buyer's name, and they just send the page that has the offer amount. And that it's and it's been signed by these other people. So
Okay.
yeah. So you don't send them the whole contract, and you just like blot out like anything that would be personal data.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Okay. All right, so writing the offer. These are all, and this is, I would make up my own list, and because different people have different ways of doing this, but and particularly once you have an accepted offer, you have certain dates, so that you want that before you expire for the repairs to be for the home inspection, and when they have to have their earnest money in and all that sort of thing. But these are just really easy questions to ask when you're writing the offer. How much money they're going to put down as earnest money. Typically, it's 1% of the purchase price. If you think it's going to be a highly competitive market, highly competitive property, then I have them put down 2%. Then you need to know how much they're going to put down as a total down payment. So that would include the earnest money. But it's on the contract, it's listed as two separate money, and two separate amounts. Right now, where we're down, volume isn't what it was last year. It's really easy to get a house inspected within a 5-day or 10-day period of time. So that just is filled out on your contract. This time for seller acceptance, that is when I will ask because sometimes, like for example, the country property that I have, that's a trust. I work with the trustee, but the trustee signs, but she has to get the approval of the two people that are accepting the money before she can accept the offer. So, so sometimes I say to the agents, give me 24 or 48 hours to sign. I might be able to get it done prior to that, but just give me that amount of time. Otherwise, the offer expires too soon. And when I had that hot property I was telling you about earlier, the one that was near the hospital, I had agents that had not reached out and asked me if I had other offers, if they hadn't spoken to me at all. And they were writing their offers to for a response that very same day by 5 o'clock. And I had put in the MLS that I was going to be reviewing offers the next day, which was on a Sunday. No, it must have been, no, it was on a Friday. So it was Friday night. I done it on Friday night. And so, but it went live on Thursday. So they were writing offers to expire on that Thursday, thinking that they could force me as a listing agent to take a look at their offer and make a decision. Well, for the most part, those that did that, they weren't offering enough, so it didn't make any difference. But you don't want to put your buyer at that disadvantage, so you better be talking to that listing agent so you find out when they're going to review offers. If it's a property that's been on the market for 60 days, and these last few houses that I've been showing this week, I've showed probably 10 or 12, and a lot of them have been on the market for 2 months. And so the only thing you need to know is if the person that's signing the acceptance, if they can sign within 24 hours. And then I always give them a 24 hours to respond. If you don't need that amount of time, then and if they can do it in 5 or 6 hours, that's fine. But all kinds of things can happen. And I had one, it was that property the hot property that I had in March. And one of the persons that was signing there were two sisters that were signing on the sales contract, and she had failed to tell me that she had a company party to go to, and so she wasn't available that night at all. Well, it just so happened that the best offer was that had enough time that we could sign it the next day and be just fine. But I had no idea. She hadn't told me. And she knew that the property had just been, that we were having all kinds of offers and stuff come through. But anyway, so those kind of things happen. So you just need to talk to that listing agent and know. Financing terms has to do with, is it conventional? Is it money that's being, maybe the down payment's coming from money that you're getting from a family member, and you have to disclose that on your offer form. We talked already about the buyer's pre-approval letter. Closing date, most lenders can close within 30 days, but sometimes a buyer wants 45 days because if they're in a rental apartment, they need some time, or if they, who knows. So that's just a discussion that you can have. It just depends on how soon your clients want in. But I generally make mine for 30 days if that works for my buyers and the seller, of course. And oftentimes you have to give those sellers a few days to occupy after closing. If it's a vacant house, that's not the case. But like this house that I just closed on this week, they don't actually get possession for a couple of weeks. And so we gave that to them for free. But then when it came, and that was in our offer, original offer. But then when it came time to negotiate on repairs, well, it wasn't actually on repairs. It was just when I went to submit the offer, I said, you didn't mention the refrigerator as being part of the sale. And because we'd written an escalation clause and given them 2 weeks to stay in the house for free, the sellers then kicked in that brand new refrigerator for my buyers. So that was pretty cool. But that's all part of negotiation. That's just finding out, asking for something, and it's all a give and take. So that worked out really well. My buyers were, if they're first-time home buyers, they did not want to have to go and shop for a refrigerator and make sure they got the right size, and then it had to be delivered and installed and all that sort of thing. So yeah, they were happy. Repair limits, I'm not sure what that means, except you do have an inspection period, and every house is different, so you're not, that's a pretty general term. So you can't ask for everything on a house, but the big ones are HVAC systems, or at least getting a portion towards the HVAC system. This little house that we closed on had a furnace that was 31 years old. The heat pump was new, relatively new, but the furnace itself was 31 years old. So we asked for $3,000. And so they gave it to us. Special clauses, that's kind of can be your escalation clause, or that even part of the offer for the right for the seller to occupy after close, that sort of thing. And some of these take on separate addendums, depending on what kind of property that you have. Any questions?
Can you talk about if the buyer decides to change the lender at some point, is that possible?
It is possible. Two things happen. One is when you present your contract offer, you have stated that it is a conventional loan, and you've provided a pre-approval letter that states who pre-approved the loan. In order to change lenders, you have to get seller approval. And if you do it a couple of weeks when you're into the transaction and you only have a 30-day close, it's very difficult for most lenders to do a 2-week close. And so, yeah, changing lenders is not a great thing to do once you're in contract. You need to know those sorts of things beforehand. Because the seller does not have to agree to let you change the lender. And if that, it puts you in violation of your contract. So it's not that you can't, but if you do it within the first few days, not a problem. And you can say to the listing agent, we're shopping around, so we may change this lender this week, but I wouldn't let it go. I wouldn't do it a couple of weeks in unless something really horrific happened.
Thank you. Is jumbo loan considered a conventional loan, or is it by, you know?
Well, jumbos are those that has to do with the dollar amount. And so, yeah, that would be a conventional loan, as opposed to FHA or VA loans, where VA, you have to be a veteran to get. But yeah, jumbo loans are conventional.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question, Linda.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's say you're selling a house, and then you think the value of the house is about 400,000, but the strategy that you went for is to list it as like 380, hoping that there's gonna be action, hoping that there's gonna be like more people who will be making an offer. So just creating action. If let's say there's an offer that's like 390, and you think the house is 400,000, do you have to take the 390, or you can just disregard it?
Well, I would take the offer, but
No, I mean,
here,
yeah, I mean, are you forced to?
nope.
Okay.
But it's a, I mean, what are you going to tell that buyer's agent when they come to you? They've already paid you $10,000 over what you offered, what you listed at 380. You, well, no, we really wanted 400.
I don't know. I'm just basing it on trying to create activity. But as a seller, there are like things that you can, there are reasons that you can use not to accept the offer, right? Other than the price. But what I'm trying to say is it, are you gonna be not in trouble if you don't accept an offer that's like 390, and then you just try to find something that's maybe it's minute, but an option to not accept the offer?
Well, let me tell you, in every market is different. Last summer, I had no hesitation with pricing at like 380, knowing that I was going to get multiple offers. In today's market, I would price it at a number to sell, and anything over that price, I would consider it a bonus.
Okay.
The market is not the same this year as it was last year. And I had great success in underpricing houses last year. And one house I priced at, let's see, maybe it was like 475 or something, and I got 611. Now that blew my mind. And here's the crazy part about it. In that particular instance, I had some other offers. The closest offer to that was 575. So they gave me almost $35,000 more than the other best offer that I had. But last year was completely different. It just isn't the same this year. And here's what happens when if I write an offer, and if I call you up and I say, what is it that what can I do to make this offer better in the eyes of your seller? Are you going to say, well, you could pay me 400? Because that's what you want. You want a better offer. But are you going to say that to that buyer's agent? Because if I was a buyer's agent, I'd say, well, then why didn't you price it at 400? my client doesn't have the ability to pay 400,000 and you're wasting our time.
Okay.
I mean, I would not be happy in today's market. Last year, totally different deal. But in this market, if you listed it at 380, you had no other offers, and I came in and said, I'll pay you 390 and you rejected my offer, I would be, as a matter of fact, I'd probably think twice before I ever showed one of your properties in the next year because it'd take me a while to cool off.
Okay. All right.
Because yeah, you know, we have to be, I mean, you have to be realistic, and you know, I think when you start thinking that you're smarter than the market is when you're going to get, and you could tell your sellers, no, I really think that this thing's worth 400,000. Let's just hold out for 400,000. And then what happens if you get 375 and you don't get another offer like that past that 3 and they offer you less? Is your seller going to be happy? No, they're going to think you're the worst agent that they could have hired.
Okay.
So you set yourself up for all kinds of misfortunes in this market.
Okay.
And I had a client one time that they had spent a ton of money fixing up this little house, and it was only like 800 or 900 square feet. And so I said, you know, none of the houses on this street, and it was kind of a crappy little street. And I said, none of the houses have sold above 248. And I said, the most that I would feel comfortable with, because they had fixed it up cute, but there were things that they hadn't done. They didn't do a thing to the kitchen, and they didn't replace like toilets and sinks or anything like that in the one bathroom that they had. So the rest of the house, they'd refinished the oak floors. They were beautiful. They'd repainted the inside. They had a new roof, new gutters. They painted the outside a god-awful yellow. It was bright. It was awful, but it was fresh paint. And so I said, look, I'll go 260, but I said, I can't list this house for more. So we show it, and we get, I do an open house, and there's a nurse that came through, and she was represented by another agent, but she came through on her own, and she really liked the property. And so she made an offer, and it at that time was listed at 260. So she made an offer, and she needed all kinds of closing costs because she was going through a divorce and all that. So basically she was offering about 240. And of course, you know, we didn't look at it. And then another neighbor down the street, he offered us, he wanted some closing costs also, but so he netted out to still be the 260. And the trustee said, no, I don't want it. And she said, I don't want to sell it at 260. And I said, well, if you don't want to sell it in 260, period, then we should never have listed it at 260. And so I said, what do you want to sell it for? And she said, 280. And I said, I'm not your agent. I said, I can't sell this house at 280. It was like almost $40,000 more than anything else of that size and condition had sold in that neighborhood. And so it took another month, and I finally did get it sold at the we agreed. I said, I'll do it at 269 and just give it a try. But if we don't get this thing sold in a month, then we're lowering it back to the 260 number. And I felt like that was it was a lot of time to let it hang out there at that 269. And it did take a full month, and then we finally got an offer. As a matter of fact, we got 2 offers on it, but not one of them was below the 269 and one was above. But the seller wasn't happy when she got the offer at the 260, which was what we were listed at, and I wasn't happy when she was, you know, balking around about it, and the agent got really mad, and that agent came back later and made another offer, and oh, I mean, I got a really nasty letter from her, and oh gosh, it was awful. So yeah, lots of bad things can happen when you're trying to be smarter than the market.
Okay, thanks.
Review the contract. Be sure your buyer understands the contract. I can tell you that so many times that these buyers do not read this contract that they're signing. Some of them will be signing it on their cell phone. The print's too small. So really cover your own, cover your behind and make sure that your guys understand fully where this price is and what they're paying. Know what's essential in your area, know the standard or common terms for offers in your area, and avoid rookie agent mistakes. Well, there are things that you're going to do as a new agent, but when you have a coach, Aaron or Mara, whoever your coach is, they save us from looking bad. And that first year and having someone in my corner that would review my offers and everything, I can't say enough about that process. It was really, made me feel like I was a very experienced agent, and I can't say enough about the coaching system. Okay, the ahas, anything there? Okay, presenting the offer. Double check all your documents. Label them clearly. Order documents logically. Email the summary. So that was what I talked about, how I like a summary to go with my PDF offer. And if I email it to the listing agent, I have already told them verbally that I'm going to send, because I'll have a telephone conversation with them, that I'm going to write the offer. And then I send them a text when I have sent it. And in my email, when I do send it, I ask them to respond back by email to tell me that they received it, because sometimes they end up in a spam folder. So, really important to let them know that they have the offer coming. Add all documents to command and consult with your buyer. Okay, so we're going to pop on over here to the review and receive and review the offer checklist. So make sure your offer is complete. And I don't do my own transactions. Angela Armstrong in our office, in the Eugene office, does my transactions. In a pinch, if it's on a weekend and I have to do it, I'll go ahead and do it. But boy, I like review that thing and go over it and over it to make sure that I've got it done correctly. And then when I send the email to the listing agent, I tell them in the email, or I'll tell them verbally, look, I don't normally do this. If I've made a mistake, Angela will clean it up on Monday. And, but you're the only one that knows all those financial details. So just make sure that everything is filled out correctly. And then you're asking, I mentioned that you want the receipt of the offer. It says get offer to seller in a timely manner. I can't imagine sitting on offers. The only time that I sit on offers is when it's like the Oakdale property that I had that I was fielding, making booking requests and filling those and answering questions. And that was the first 12 hours was just a barn burner. It was very exciting and very fun. I love it. But all I did was text in the afternoon and text the daughters of the seller that I had multiple offers in hand, and I would talk to them later. And so they didn't need to know all the details until I could put them on an Excel spreadsheet, because even I didn't have them all. I had printed them off as they came in, but I didn't for sure know where I was at. So then create an executive summary, call the buyer's agent. Now, here's another thing. Once you have selected an offer and got it signed, I don't click my my offer pending until I have called each one of those buyer's agents that wrote me an offer. And some people will just send out an email, a massive email to all of them on a blind carbon copy. I guess that's okay too, but because I had a career of telephone sales when I was a wholesale lumber broker, and then prior to that, when I was a sawmill sales manager, all of that was done pre-computer, and it was done person to person. And I'm just here to tell you that it still works. There's still a lot of people that really want to, we're just human beings and they like that personal contact. You'll get a feel for it as you go along, but I'd rather talk to these agents and explain why their offer wasn't accepted and give them that courtesy. They took time out of their day to go and show it and to represent my listing, and I owe them that courtesy. And sometimes they'll say to you, yeah, it was a first-time home buyer, and we had to start somewhere to make an offer so that they can see how the process works, particularly in a multiple offer situation. And they may say to you, yeah, I didn't think I'd get my offer accepted, but I really appreciate you calling. So other times, you might find out that they would like to be in a backup position. Backup positions never hurt you to take that. So it's good to have that, put that out there when you have multiple offers. Call the lender. I'm not very good about doing this, and I think that it's a really good idea to do it. And if I know the lender, I'll shoot them a real quick email later or something, and check in with them. I just haven't had lender problems, and so I guess I'm not as sensitive about that. And sometimes I'll call to just make sure, like the property I closed this week, their lender was Rocket Mortgage, and they were based out of like Tennessee or someplace. And so I did call them a couple times, and just to make sure that everything was on time and that everything was going smoothly. And it turned out to be a really perfect transaction. So it worked just fine having them being out of state. Create an outline document to reference when you call the sellers. So yeah, that's what I do with my Excel spreadsheet. So just for an example, I'll tell you a little bit about that Excel spreadsheet that I like so well. So I write down who the people are that are purchasing. This is when I have multiple offers. I have a column for what kind of loan they're getting, if it's conventional, if it's VA, if it's FHA. Part of the reason for that is if it's FHA, like if a house has peeling paint, even VA, I think, requires this too. You have to touch up all that paint, and so they have a few different requirements. But other than that, I've had no problems with either FHA loans or VA loans. So I don't have any bias against them, but I just write that down so that the seller knows what we're dealing with. I write down how much their down payment is, how much the earnest money payment is. If they've written an escalation clause, I highlight that in red and put it on a separate line from the price that they're offering. I have a column that is the deadline time when we have to respond back. And then I also put the agent's name on there. So it's a pretty detailed spreadsheet, but I use it on every seller if I have multiple offers, and it helps. Particularly if I have a lot of my clients that are older, and so I might have a 94-year-old and have 2 children that want to be a part of it, and so I make the spreadsheet for all of them, and then I generally meet with them face to face. I don't necessarily do that over the phone. If I have an older client like that, they want to be able to just see it and talk to me and that sort of thing. So I take the time to go and be present with them. Create an offer in command. And if I don't do command, Angela handles that. So I'm going to skip that because I've got my contacts in it to some degree, but I don't mess with command. And I'm not saying that it's not a good thing, but I'm a one pony show. I do all of it. I stage my own listings myself. I rent the U-Haul. I load the trucks. I unload the trucks. I do all of that stuff myself just because I like it. And so then I just pay someone else to do the command. I just don't want to do it. Receive, review, and respond to the offer. So I see nothing new there that we didn't cover in the previous slide that was just like that, or several of them back. Reach a decision. So again, this is nothing new. We've already talked about this. Whether your offer is getting accepted, it's getting countered, or getting rejected. Oh, and by the way, in this rejecting the offer, when I have multiple offers and the time frame has run out, I do not make my sellers sign 8 different documents that they've rejected the offer. I just let them expire. And those are personal decisions. So some people like to, they want them done, but it's not required. So I don't do it. I just let them expire. And most of the people do that other agents, buyer's agents that I deal with on my listings. Okay. We're not going to role play because that would be a little difficult maybe, but okay. So any ahas? Any questions? Okay, so this says recaps and ahas. Okay, so the first thing it says, how has your thinking changed? What ideas or mindsets are new? Anybody?
I think for me, it's just like the little tidbits that you're saying. That I'm just kind of like taking down the notes. You know, the good old make sure that you like the value of the human to human conversation and to call them rather than to just like put on the internet that they didn't get the listing. I think that that's something that I'll try to carry on in my own business.
Well, you know, what's really interesting is that in doing that, you never know when your offer might fall through. Now that we're in this really kind of precarious market, I think it makes even more sense to have really good rapport with those agents that have come to you, because you may, a week later, that thing may fall through. They may just have changed their mind, or they may have found a better, new, shinier object, another house that they like better, and they can drop out. That first 10 days of that inspection period, they can drop out because the feng shui isn't right. I mean, they drop out for any and all reasons. And if you've built good rapport and respected those other agents, you can call them up and say, hey, would you like this? My offer fell through. Before I put this back as an active listing, do you want to talk to your buyer? Do they want to come back in? Makes that conversation so much easier, because then you need them. Before, they needed you. But then when your deal falls through, you need them. And that's when I think that rapport building really pays off. So, and you know, it's funny how human relationships are. The other day, I'd made an offer on a property, and unbeknownst to me, the lender was somebody on the seller's property. The lender was somebody that had done a deal for me. Only one. I've recommended her multiple times to people because she was such a bulldog and just saved my customers 2% on because the listing agent on this transaction that she did, they wanted them to do it as a rehab loan. And so she looked at the inspection report and she goes, I don't see any reason why this needs to be. Yes, it's a fixer, but it's not a bad fixer. I think I can get this done through conventional. And it was a 2% loan difference. So save my buyers a ton of money. So I just, you know, I love her. I'm like, you know, she'll really work for a client. So this listing agent had my offer and another offer. And that lender said, oh, take Linda's offer, take Linda's offer. And whether or not it made any influence on that listing agent, I don't know. But the lender herself called me up and she just said, "Hey, I'm so happy I don't get to represent your buyer, but we're kind of working together." And I go, "Hey, that's great." And then so she told me this story. So you never know what good things people are doing behind the scenes for you. And I just think that, you know, good karma goes a long way. So the second thing is, it says, how do you feel different, or what do you feel differently about, and what was meaningful to you today? I think sometimes when we haven't had transactions, it's really hard to, you know, everything is so new, and sometimes when you don't have something to compare it to, it's kind of hard. We'll just go on to the next one. How will your behaviors be different going forward, and what actions will you take?
I can say for me, I'm a big checklist person, so I really like these checklists. Excuse me. Makes me feel a lot more knowledgeable and comfort in a level of comfort for me to be able to proceed without panic, I guess. I don't know how to say that, but I like to have the checklist in front of me. It makes me feel comfortable and a lot more confident with what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think that it makes you look like they can't tell you from a seasoned agent if you have your checklist and you're following everything that needs to be done. They you know, they really can't tell any different from you in whether it's or not your first transaction or not. Tell you a little story about the first transaction that I had when I represented a buyer. There were several things that I didn't know that I was supposed to do. And bless this agent's heart, she would say to me, and she never once said, "Are you a new agent?" She said, "Would you like me to send you that addendum?" And so I knew that it was my job. And I just said, "Yes, would you do that, please?" And so then she did. And so she made me look good, and she did not make me feel stupid. And so I have tried to pass that on and in just a pay it forward way to other agents when they're new and help them out, because I didn't want to ever say, "This is my first buyer transaction and I don't really know what I'm doing." I didn't want to have to do that. And so she just made me look good. So yeah, I think that those checklists, that's exactly what it does. It makes you look good, and it doesn't make you look like a rookie. And there's nothing wrong with being a rookie. We all were once a rookie. And so we just need people that are out there helping us and remember the day when they were just starting out. What tools, models, or systems will you use, and how will they make you accountable? I'm not so sure that they gave us a lot in that today for tools and systems, but tools, yes, systems, no. Okay, this next slide has to do with our daily progress system. And I have to tell you that I was not very good at all of this as I started out. I relied heavily on my sphere. The handwritten notes, I still think to this day that is still a very good thing to do. Just a little FYI, since 1995, I've been a certified etiquette consultant, and I've given all kinds of classes on business etiquette as well as dining etiquette. And the handwritten notes is always something that we talk about throughout our etiquette training and whatever class that we're sending, whether you've been invited to somebody's house for dinner and just thank them for the meal and all that goes with it. And some of these things are just important to do no matter what. So, but adding these contacts, and if you do open houses and you get a strong contact, just be sure that you include them into a follow-up system so you don't lose track of them. That's probably one of my most important lessons to learn. And it's often really hard at open houses to get somebody to give you all the right information. But the house that I just closed on this week was somebody I met at an open house, and they were just adorable buyers, and I took them to dinner the other day and they'd never been to the speakeasy, and because they couldn't get into their house first, I said, well, let's just go celebrate anyway. So we went to the speakeasy, had cocktails, and we went into the regular restaurant and had dinner and just had a fun evening. And so it was just all great.
May I interrupt real quick?
You bet.
With your etiquette coach hat on, what, I'm embarrassed to say this. Say I need to send a thank you card or a thank you note. I understand it should probably go in the mail within 48 hours, but is there like a time that if it hasn't been sent, just don't send it? Or like, what's the best way to kind of get out of that hole?
Oh, well, if I just didn't get it done and I'm a couple weeks late, I just say, I'm so sorry that life happened and I didn't get this out, but the memory is still strong in my mind. Thank you so much for the dinner, blah, blah, blah. They'll get it. I mean, they probably, most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, they're not somebody who sends thank yous themselves, so they think you're a rock star. So yeah, just kind of tell it like it is, but just say, go back to the fact that you just haven't forgotten and that it was a pleasurable time and you had a great time and thanks for the laughs and great wine, great dinner. And I want your recipe for salmon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Something that, yeah, no, I think that you can never be too late. Yeah, you probably can, but send that thing. Yeah, really important. Okay, then down here, the do not call list. Because I don't do robocalls and stuff, I've never had to worry about that. Some people have those auto dialer things that they pay for, but I've never resorted to that. So just be aware of it. I engage every conversation in the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in friendship or in relationship with me. That must be a mantra we're supposed to say. And role play for 20 minutes, so we're not going to do that. I don't know why they're giving us these things for so much time. Good grief. Surely they're not talking to us. Okay, prepare for the next session. Okay, so I think that just about takes care of us for today. So one final, do you have any questions or anything that you would like to say before we say goodbye?
Thank you.
Kind of more of a business question. For down in the Eugene area, I do have some buyers looking down there. I'm not from there. Do you have an inspector that you would refer?
I have used Pillar to Post on all of my inspections, and they're in Portland, they're in Salem, they do coastal properties, and then I use them here in Eugene all the time. They go down to Cottage Grove from the Eugene office and that sort of thing. And the reason that I like them is they are, they come with their printer, they print off a binder that their people have, that your clients will have that very day. And so I like them a lot. And they also can pull up on their computer and show you the visual and where they crawled around inside the upper attic or underneath the house and the crawl space and that sort of thing. I'll give you their phone number. I'm looking it up right now. There's a number of agents that are out there, but these are just the ones that I mean, I've just used them for the 7 years and I've never been disappointed. So their main phone number is 541-998-4559. And their email address is mills, MILLS, .team, TEAM, at Pillar, PILLAR, to TO post, POST.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. And like I said, they have multiple locations, and I've used them all, in the States. So yeah. Yep. And they were a recommendation from one of the top agents here in Eugene when I first started. So I figured that if it's good for them, it had to be good for me. So anything else?
Yes, Linda, does Keller Mortgage still exist?
Does Keller what?
Keller Mortgage?
Oh, I think they sold out. I think they do still exist, but once they sold out, and I think they might even still maintain the name, but I sort of lost interest in them. They changed a number, and I used them quite a few times because they saved my people money. But then
Mhm.
I had like 2 or 3 different loan officers, and they either quit or got laid off or something. So then I just started concentrating on local people instead.
Okay.
So I've been just as happy by doing it that way. And the one thing about it is that I don't recommend just one lender to my buyers. I
Mhm.
have 3 or 4. So like Direct Mortgage, for example, has private money. So if you need somebody that needs to have a cash transaction, then they're a good person to go to. And there's up in the Portland area, her first name is Dawn. I can't remember what her last name is, but I've sat through all kinds of continuing ed. Dawn Carter, I think is her name.
Okay.
Through all kinds of continuing ed classes that she's given on lending and everything. And I'll tell you what, she is one smart cookie.
Okay.
So I really like her. Are you in the Portland area?
Yes.
Okay, Dawn
Okay.
Carter, her phone number just for, it's DAWN, but
Mhm.
number is 503-636-6000.
Okay.
And if you want to get on an email list for her continuing ed, her email address is D, just the letter D for Dawn
Mhm.
Carter at Directors Mortgage
Okay.
.net.
All right. Got it.
She's in Lake Oswego, but she's actually closed a couple transactions for me up there and everything. But yeah, she's good. And then in the Eugene area, I recommend several different people. So and I get them because like Keller will have lenders panels that come through, or they'll speak at maybe a Springfield Board of Realtors meeting. I don't belong to the Eugene Realtors, but they're at various events, and so you can just sort of develop a rapport with them. And this one lady that I told you that recommended to the listing agent to take my offer, one of the first trainings that I went to, another agent invited me to go, and they were doing a session on rehab loans. And I knew nothing about rehab loans. And so when it came time that I had to have a client write a loan for a rehab loan, then I remembered her. So I used her. So yeah, you just kind of listen and see and attend different trainings, and you can kind of build your own, or just ask somebody, ask another recommendation.
Okay. And I have a comment to make. A comment. So
Yes.
I was coming back from a long vacation 3 months ago. So when I came back, I was back in the business, and I was helping a buyer make an offer. So that was my first ever offer to make. And I attended your class, the other quarter, and I had a recording of your class. So I listened and watched your video, and I took a lot of notes. So your teaching, whatever information you gave before, they were very, very, very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that's the first time that I've heard anything like that, but I love it. And the interesting thing about it, I always believe in whatever you do in life, it comes back to you. And I really enjoy helping people, and somebody has helped me get to where I am today. Lots of different people and little, and I just take tidbits from them. And so I feel like it's sort of my duty to pass on whatever I can. And so thank you so much for that, Manny. I really appreciate that. And let me give you my email address and my phone number. So if any of you have any questions at any time that you would like to bounce something off, shoot me off an email, a text, or call me on the phone. My cell phone number is 541-953-3011. And my email address is Linda, LINDA .reed, REED @kw.com. Okay. And then if anybody wants that spreadsheet, shoot me off an email. That's just a sample of my spreadsheet. I also have another spreadsheet that I do when I'm, for example, when I went to Portland one time and I was showing those $1 million houses, it was a 2-day event. So I think we looked at like 15 houses over the course of 2 days. And I did that on a spreadsheet too, because I had to write down when I had booking appointments and if the houses were vacant or if they were not vacant. Because then if they were vacant and I got finished early, I could go to one of them beforehand and stuff. So those kind of checklist things and spreadsheets, I love using those. So those might be helpful to you. So shoot me an email if you want either of those copies, the one for showings or the one for when I receive offers. Just shoot me an email. Thank you for spending time with me this afternoon. And I always like to quit early. So you got 10 minutes to go do something fun. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Linda.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.